Welcome, dear dreamer. You've arrived in a place of peace, a place where effort can pause, where breath can deepen, and where you can simply be. Before we begin, if this moment of stillness speaks to you, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. This space is devoted to transformational tales, calm, reflective stories designed to guide you through the quiet wisdom of life. Each story holds a gentle message, rooted in ancient teachings and timeless truths about navigating uncertainty, finding peace in the everyday, and learning how to move with the natural flow of things. By subscribing, you're joining a community that values slow breaths, deeper meanings, and the subtle art of living well. And you help others find their way here too, to these quiet waters. Tonight's story, The River That Never Rushed, is more than a tale. It is a reflection, a reminder, inspired by the ancient wisdom of Taoism. It whispers that the river of life cannot be forced. That movement does not always mean progress, that stillness is not stagnation, and that peace comes not from pushing harder, but from flowing with what already is. You may see yourself in Lin, a young ferryman caught between effort and surrender. You may feel his urgency, his longing, and slowly feel his softening too. This story invites you to listen inward, to let go, to drift gently into the wisdom that lives not in striving, but in trust. So now, let us prepare the mind and body. Let the day slip away. Let the breath guide you gently inward. Take a slow, deep breath in through the nose and exhale softly. Again, inhale and release. Feel your body soften. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw loosen. Let the tension melt from your hands, your chest, your back. The river awaits you now. Its pace is steady and kind. There is no rush, only flow. Now, if you're ready, let your breath settle. Let your mind loosen its grip. There is no need to try, no need to follow every word. Just let the rhythm guide you, soft and slow. Let the story meet you where you are. You are safe and welcome here. Now, drift with me. And let us begin. In the cradle of the valley, veiled by drifting morning mist, lay a river that seemed to sleep as it moved. The village beside it stirred slowly each day, people rising with the sun, voices low, steps unhurried. The elders said the river had shaped their lives as much as their fields. It taught them to wait, to watch, to yield. Even celebrations followed the rhythm of the water, never loud, never fast. Children learned to swim not in splashes, but in glides, and all who lived there knew the river would arrive where it was going, always in its time. But Lin was different. Even as a boy, he felt the pull of elsewhere. He'd listened to travelers' tales with wide eyes, imagining cities with bright lanterns and streets that buzzed. He wanted movement, not stillness. The river, to him, was a barrier, not a companion. His grandfather, who once ferried villagers across the same river, would say, "The river doesn't resist, and so it moves through everything." Lin tried to understand, but his heart beat faster than the river flowed. He would race its edges, trying to beat it to the bend. When Lin took over the family ferry, his frustrations grew. He pushed hard at the oars, his strokes sharp and fast. Passengers settled in for quiet journeys, but Lin silently timed them, trying to make each trip shorter than the last. He believed he was improving, working smarter, faster, but the river slowed him. It curved, it paused, it ignored his urgency completely. He gritted his teeth each time he saw leaves drifting lazily beside him, as if mocking his effort. Sometimes, the current pulled him off course, toward tangled reeds or shallow bends. Other times, it seemed to resist entirely, stalling him midstream as if asking, "Why hurry?" He began to resent the silence, the sky, even the birds. Everything was slow. Everything refused to match his pace. One evening, Lin joined the village elders at a small fire by the riverbank. The night was cool, the air still. The elders shared their usual slow stories, tales of wind and water, of trees that bent in storms but never broke. One story lingered with Lin. There was a young man who tried to dam the river, thinking he could make it faster, more useful. But the water found its way around him, through him, and eventually carried him away. Only when he let it carry him did he find where it was meant to lead. Lin stared into the fire. That story echoed somewhere deep. After the tale ended, one of the elders turned to Lin, his gaze steady but kind. "Tell me, Lin," he said softly, "why do you row so hard if the river does not resist?" Lin opened his mouth to answer, but no words came. That night, Lin lay in bed, hearing the river's gentle sigh outside his window. He wondered, for the first time, what it might feel like to simply drift. He had never questioned his need to rush. He only knew that stillness felt uncomfortable, unfamiliar. The elder smiled knowingly and said, "Perhaps it is not the river that tires you, but your need to fight it." The next morning, Lin rose before the sun. The mist still curled over the water, pale and cool like breath. He stepped into his boat and let it drift a little before lifting the oars. His first passenger was an old man, silent and smiling, holding a small bundle wrapped in cloth. Lin didn't speak. He moved slowly, deliberately. He loosened his grip on the oars. The current did much of the work, and for the first time, the crossing felt light, not quicker, but easier. The man nodded when they reached the other side. Lin realized he hadn't looked at the time once. The river had taken them exactly where they needed to go. As Lin helped the old man from the boat, the old man paused and looked out across the water. Then, in a low voice, he said, "There is something I need to show you." Lin blinked, surprised. The old man gestured down the path toward a secluded bend in the river where reeds grew tall and no boats ever docked. With nothing but the hush of water around them, they walked slowly together. the edge of a clearing, the old man reached into the cloth bundle again. Not for stones this time, but a small, time-worn scroll. "I once believed the river wasted my years," he said, unrolling it carefully. "But here is where I wrote what it taught me. About healing, about timing, about surrender." Lynn read the calligraphy slowly, its brushstroke simple but flowing. It was a map, not of places, but of principles. In that moment, he knew the old man had not returned by chance. He had returned to pass something on. "You fought this river, didn't you?" he asked gently. Lynn nodded, unsure what to say. The old man continued, "I did too once. Thought I could outpace it, bend it, use it. But one day, it stopped being an obstacle and became my teacher." He opened the cloth bundle to reveal a few river stones, smooth, worn, perfectly shaped by time and flow. "They're not special," the old man said, "only patient." Lynn ran his fingers over one. It was soft-edged, cool. "You don't need to force your way through the world, Lynn," the old man whispered. "Let it carry you. You'll arrive." Days passed gently, but the season turned. The skies began to change. Lynn could feel it, like a slow breath being held. Then one evening, as clouds gathered over the hills, the wind began to stir the river with a strange urgency. A storm was coming. Villagers secured shutters and pulled their boats ashore. But Lynn remained at the water's edge, watching the river rise. This time, he didn't fight it. He listened. The air was thick, electric, and yet Lynn stood calm. Not because he knew what would come, but because he had learned to stop resisting what would. When the storm broke, he launched his ferry without fear. No passengers, no destination, just himself and the river. The boat rocked and turned, but Lynn moved with it. He let the water lead, and in the heaviest moment, when the river surged and lightning lit the sky, he laughed quietly, because at last he wasn't struggling. He had become part of the current, and the river cradled him. When the storm passed, the village emerged like new. The earth smelled rich and clean. Trees shimmered with droplets, and the river, though swollen, had found its calm again. Lin stood at the bank, his clothes still damp, his hair plastered to his skin, but his eyes were bright with something quiet and certain. Villagers came to him, not to scold, not to question, but to listen. He didn't say much, just sat among them and passed smooth stones from hand to hand. Later, as the sun returned, Lin walked to the clearing where he had once met the old man. The scroll was gone, but in its place, a single stone sat in the grass, smooth, patient, still. He picked it up, held it against his chest, and smiled. Because he knew now. The river had always been teaching him to arrive, not at a place, but a way of being. He didn't need to move faster. He just needed to move with life. In the weeks that followed, Lin returned to the river each morning, not with urgency, but with openness. When villagers approached for passage, he welcomed them warmly, but he no longer rushed. Instead, he told quiet stories. Stories not of destinations, but of lessons hidden in eddies and bends. He taught the children how to feel the current with their fingertips, how to listen with their feet as the boat moved beneath them. Sometimes he would guide someone to a quiet cove just to sit in silence, and they would return lighter, though they didn't always know why. The ferry was still his, but now it was a place of quiet transformation, where each crossing was more than a journey across water. It was a soft unfolding. And Lin was no longer just a ferryman. He was the river's voice, the one who had learned to move with the world instead of against it. One morning, as the mist still clung to the river's edge, a stranger arrived, They wore the cloak of a traveller, dusty from long roads, and carried a heavy pack. Their shoulders sagged with something more than fatigue. Lin welcomed them onto the boat without question. As they sat in silence, Lin noticed how tightly the traveller clutched their pack. He said nothing, only let the ferry drift quietly between the reeds. Halfway across, the traveller whispered, "Does the river ever hurry?" Lin smiled and replied, "No, and yet it always arrives." The traveller let go of the pack straps and for the first time breathed deeply. No more words passed between them. When they reached the far shore, the traveller stepped off lighter, their footsteps softer. Lin knew then the river still had many to teach, and he would be there, ferrying each one gently toward themselves. That evening, as the last golden rays of sunlight scattered across the water, Lin remained on the dock alone. The ferry was tied loosely, gently swaying beside him, its wooden hull creaking in rhythm with the river's breath. The day had passed like a whisper, and now everything slowed into the hush of twilight. He watched the shadows stretch and the water catch fire with reflected light. A hush had fallen, not only around him, but within him too. He sat with his legs dangling just above the current and thought of the old man's scroll, the storm, the child's laughter from earlier, and the quiet traveller who had spoken only once. Each moment, once scattered, now felt like part of the same current. He picked up a flat stone from the dock's edge and set it gently on the water. It floated for a moment, then sank. He smiled. Not everything must stay to leave its mark. As the sky deepened into dusk, he whispered to the river, "Thank you." And in return, it said nothing, only flowed, just as it always had and always would. Years passed. The ferry still rocked gently beside the old dock, though its oars had grown smooth with time. Lin's hair silvered, His posture softened, but his presence remained rooted and calm, like the riverbanks that had always held him. Some said he could hear the river speak. Others simply noticed how people left his boat changed, less burdened, more whole. And even though the world beyond the valley moved faster with each season, travelers still came, drawn not by signs or maps, but by something quieter. And Lin ferried them, one by one, not just across the river, but gently inward to that silent place within, where nothing rushed and everything arrived just as it was meant to. And long after his story ended, the river kept flowing, carrying whispers of his quiet strength, software steady forever. And now, dear dreamer, let Lin's journey rest with you for a while. You see, the story of Lin is not about a destination. It's about learning to trust life's rhythm and letting go of the need to control its pace. Like the river, life curves, meanders, and sometimes slows to a near stillness, but it is never truly stopped. The lesson here is not to force movement, but to find peace within the flow, to understand that we do not arrive by racing forward, but by surrendering to the current beneath us. When we stop resisting, we begin to feel what has always carried us. This story gently reminds us patience is not waiting. It is trusting that what is meant will come in its time. You are not behind. You are not late. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. Now take a deep breath and let the current hold you, Let yourself drift. Let the river inside you soften and rest until morning, when the sun rises once more over still water.